All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the Sherwood School Board to order for a work session that is being live streamed. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Cordy.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We are excited to share with you in this work session the hard work that our middle school and high school teams have been working on around secondary returning to in-person. And so that's going to be the focus for our work session this evening. As we typically do, before we enter into those conversations, we are going to give you an update on vaccines and metrics changes and case rates. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Bell, and he's going to share that information for us.
Thank you, Superintendent Cordy, Board Chair Allen, and Board. Happy to share with you today some improvements and continuing to grow in the right direction. As you remember, we need to be in the yellow column in order to maintain on-site learning, both hybrid as well. And the case counts need to stay between 50 and 200 per 100,000 and have a test positivity rate of less than 10%. You'll see in a moment that we are still within that column. In this past week, February 21st to March 5th, we have at 86.6 per 100,000 and a test positivity rate of 3.5%. So we continue to downward trend. After last week was a slight uptick. And then this week we continue to see that downward trend. And given these numbers and the metrics, we have continued our planning with reopening weeks in the coming weeks. Next, we wanted to give you an update on the vaccines. First dose appointments for all waves were closed at noon on Friday the 5th. We had good success with getting the staff who wanted shots signed up to receive one. We've had a few staff members in wave 4 who have received both shots at this point, but they likely received their vaccinations through other means like spouses, access, and things like that. Our staff remain eligible to sign up for doses, but now have to use the regular sign-up method through the Oregon Convention Center Vaccination Clinic rather than the specific educator one. Last week, we conducted a survey of all staff, and this brief anonymous survey was to see how many district staff wanted to receive the vaccine, how many had been able to successfully schedule a first dose, and when and check on the progress of second doses in the early waves. We had 420 respondents, which is roughly 3/4 of our staff, and I'd like to share the data collected from that. This first slide talks about which waves folks identified with, and we asked this question so that we could determine how well each wave did in receiving their vaccinations in a timely manner. We originally thought that wave 1 and wave 4 would be of similar size, with the other two smaller, but clearly from our data collected, wave 1 was by far the largest. The number is just slightly down from wave 1 and wave 2 survey in terms of whether they were planning to. We were at 92.5% before, and now that's down to 91.9% on people who are planning to receive all of it. This third slide is, were you able to schedule a first dose appointment? Of our 386 respondents who wished to get the vaccine, we had 96.6% who were able to schedule their first dose. Some of the reasons provided why some were not able included things like need to schedule an appointment further out due to medical reasons, no appointments available during the time frame they could go. They couldn't get an appointment when they tried, but were able to later, or found one through a spouse's work. They were not in a wave, they were waiting for their age group options. And some technical problems, and then others who were undecided at the time their wave had access. We tried to assist as much as possible with staff who had technical difficulties, and encouraged anyone who found that there were no appointments to keep trying. The persistence paid off for the large majority of our staff members, even ones who struggled to get appointments initially, who stuck with it, were almost all able to gain them through the website. In this next slide, the question was, if you have received your first dose, which vaccine did you receive? The percentage of Pfizer vaccine is now down somewhat from our previous survey results of 93.8%. We think this is a reflection of staff acquiring the vaccine from locations other than the Oregon Convention Center, where Pfizer has been predominant. And at this point, I will hand it over to Gary Bennett for an update on reopening.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Next, we want to talk a little bit about middle school return to in-person instruction. In just a moment, I'll hand it over to Ms. Funderhyde, principal of Sherwood Middle School. But first, I just wanted to take a second to thank Ms. Funderhyde and her team for all the work they've done behind the scenes to prepare. Just what you see tonight in a few short slides is actually hundreds of hours of work over the course of the last many months, going even clear back to summer and designing a schedule for comprehensive distance learning that lent itself to transitioning to in-person instruction. That planning ahead way back in the summer really paid off, and then all the hard work and the details that go into planning something like this are numerous, and as the onion peels back, there's just more and more details, and they did an amazing job attending to those. And so I just want to take a moment to publicly recognize her. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Ms. Funderhyde.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Board Chair Allen, Superintendent Cordy, and Board of Directors, I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you our continued work related to reopening of our schools to in-person instruction. Next slide, Christine, please. As we planned, this is a sample of a student schedule, and as we were planning for hybrid, we knew consistency for students would be important. And for that reason, our hybrid schedule mirrors the distance learning schedule. Our classes will remain 40 minutes, and the day will continue to begin with our social emotional learning through our flight time. You'll notice the day starts at 9 o'clock, which is 30 minutes later, and the passing periods are staggered to limit the number of students in the hallways. And then these passing periods will also be used to disinfect classrooms between groups of students in between class periods. Next slide, please. In the hybrid model, students are assigned to an AB cohort, and they attend in person every other day. On the days that they're not in person, they will engage in their classes asynchronously. Cloud Campus students are also going to be on an AB rotation with some synchronous classes every day. Those students will only be, Cloud Campus students will only be with other Cloud Campus students for their instructions, and so that instruction will be tailored to virtual learning to best meet their needs. Next slide, please. We sent a survey out to families along with an FAQ on February 19th, allowing families to select the learning model that they would prefer for Q4. And the survey indicated that students whose families chose not to participate in the survey would remain in their current model of learning, whether that's hybrid or Cloud Campus. And families were given just over a week to complete that survey. Next slide, please. You can see the results of the survey here on this slide. We had 781 students who were represented in our survey results. The majority of our families chose the hybrid model for Q4, 83.9%, and also plan to utilize district provided transportation. And of the respondents, you can see 16% chose Cloud Campus as their preferred learning model for Q4. Next slide, please. So in order to meet the needs of the students in the hybrid model and adhere to the health and safety protocols, additional classified staffing is needed. This includes staff to supervise arrivals, lunches, dismissal, and as kids are spread out to maximize the social distancing, we just simply need more staff to support them in supervision. In addition, we know it's critical that we tend to the mental health of our students when they return, which will mean additional rest and return room support. And just as a side note reminder, the rest and return room is a social emotional support where students can receive individualized lessons and activities to help them gain skills in the areas of stress management, self-regulation, and you're familiar with the green rooms at the elementary. level. The rest and return room is the same model at the middle level. So in total, this amounts to 15 additional hours of classified FTE daily. And with both the hybrid and cloud campus models running simultaneously, there's also a need for 0.4 FTE certified to support the cloud campus flight time students, because they will also be getting that SEL in if they're in the cloud campus. Next slide, please. So as we were preparing for the transition time, we will not have students in school the week of March 29th through April 2nd. March 29th is a grading day, and that's following the end of the quarter 3 on March 19th prior to spring break. The remainder of that week, staff will engage in professional development, which will include health and safety protocols, focus on instruction in the hybrid model, CLT planning, orientation planning, which I'll speak to here in just a little bit. And if possible, when possible, some get to know you team building activities to onboard the in-person with new staff. Next slide, please. So we prioritized our orientations for all students, as we know that the building is new to many of them, and creating a feeling of belonging is important for all 3 grade levels. In addition, having the orientation was a suggestion from our Transformation Visioning Advisory Committee, made up of staff and parents and school board members. And we believe it's critical for all grades as we bring the two schools together and create a new school culture. So for this reason, we've identified these dates for orientation. 8th grade will be on the 5th and 6th of April. 7th grade will be on the 7th and 8th. And 6th grade will be on the 9th and 12th of April. And during these orientation days, students will get to walk through the building. They'll have training on the entry and exit protocols and other safety protocols. And then teams of teachers will create activities and get to know you, team building activities during those orientation days as well, which will be part of the planning the week prior. Students that are not on site for orientation will engage in distance learning. And then beginning April 13th, all hybrid students will attend on site in their cohorts that they're assigned, whether that's A or B day. Next slide, please. So finally, we will be adjusting the conference schedule and model. Our conferences, our hope is that conferences will be more of an outreach model where staff will contact families during the transition weeks, those 2 weeks. And this will be an opportunity to just engage in conversations with families about supports that maybe need to be put in place for students to be successful as they return to in-person learning. It also adds back instructional time by not having the traditional conferences in the evening of the 15th and during the day of the 16th. So that is the work that we've been engaged in, and we've learned some things from our elementary colleagues and have grabbed greatness from them, and we are excited to get the students back into the building.
So let's stop there and see if anyone's got questions. Yeah, Eric.
So I was kind of wondering about when the survey went out, how many students actually changed models going from hybrid to cloud and cloud to hybrid from the staff changes. It seems like that movement was minimal.
Yes, thank you for the question, Eric. It was minimal. We were at so originally we were about 14, just over 14% of families that originally said cloud campus, and then that's then got bumped. So just under 2% made that change. So it was minimal, which I think really speaks to just the need of our middle school students to be back in with their peers and with their teachers.
Other questions? Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Can I ask one more about the passing period, the 9-minute passing period? And can you elaborate a little bit more about what's going to happen during that time? So the kids will be, I mean, like who's going to be cleaning the classroom? Where are the kids going to be during the passing period when they're not in the classroom? And you mentioned that's going to be staggered. So can you talk a little bit about how it's kind of staggered throughout the school?
Sure. So we have actually in the schedule, it's a 9-minute passing period, and they're actually going to be broken into 3 different sections. So it would be how, for example, when it's broken into A, B, and C houses of teacher teams. And so Team A would dismiss the first 3 minutes and go, and we have routes that are mapped out so that they have a path that they're going to take to get to their next class, which is the beauty of the teams and the wings in this building have really helped with that. So they'll have the routes, and then at after the next 3 minutes and the 6 minutes, the B group will go, and then the C group will go last. And the opportunity that teachers will have when I get my students a few minutes before the rest of the students, or when I'm engaging with my class before I dismiss them, is really just an opportunity to get to know and build those relationships. It will be less about continuing the academic piece of the learning and really just making those connections. So between the staggered times, between the team model and the routes that they'll be going, that's our greatest hope during the passing time. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you.
You're more than welcome to come and live it with us.
Other questions, Jessica?
So I don't have any questions, but I do want to just go back really fast to the metrics that we've seen continue to fall. And I think this is just constant reinforcement that this is because of the great work of the community to really follow masking and hand washing and really do all the things that are still really necessary. And just really want to acknowledge that, because the more we can stay on that track, the more opportunities that it affords for students and families and sports and a whole wide range of things. And I just really want to celebrate that we've consistently week after week after week since January seen that fall, and that's making all of this possible and returning to a school environment that will still be different, but more normal-ish than would otherwise have been possible.
Thanks, well put. Any other questions? Ready to move on to high school? Let's go for it.
Thank you, Director Allen. Thank you, Mrs. Thunderhide. Appreciate your time and all of your hard work. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the high school return to in-person instruction. And in just a moment, I'll turn it over to Melissa Barron, principal of Sherwood High School. But again, I just wanted to thank Ms. Barron and her team for their incredible work. As you know, anything in a high school is complex. It's like running a small city on some levels with 1,700 kids and a staff of well over 100. But then when you add the complexity of planning to meet the guidance that's out, planning for next year and what that's going to look like, and getting ready for forecasting, planning for athletic events, all of which are compressed into the end of the season, and there's mini contests every night. And as you know, the rules are more complex for each one of those. It's just been a tremendous lift for them as well. And I know Ms. Barron well enough to know she'll be smiling and tonight, and through it all, she's kept a really good, positive approach and just they're working really hard. And I just want to acknowledge their hard work and thank them for that before we jump right in. So on that note, Ms. Barron, thank you for your work, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Good evening, Board Chair Allen, Board of Directors, Superintendent Cordy. It's really nice to be here, even in the midst of all the craziness. We have been working tirelessly to get a plan together to bring back our high school students, and I'm really excited about where we're at right now. And it just makes me so happy, guys, and the things that are happening in our building right now, and with athletics being in full swing, it's fun. It's fun again. And so that's just really exciting to be able to talk about tonight. Next slide, please. we, as I said, have been working very hard to come up with the best possible schedule. And as Mr. Bennett alluded to, at the high school level, we just had so many complexities that we wanted to make sure that we paid very close attention to. Chief among them was maintaining our consistent schedule. And so the last time I was here, I talked about how we really wanted to make sure that students remained with the courses that they had forecast for, that they'd chosen for fourth quarter. And so that kind of steered us in a certain direction. And so where we landed and what you see in front of you is a sample student schedule that is color coded, because we are going to divide our school in half into 2 cohorts. And we actually very intentionally decided to use numbers instead of letters, because we are dividing our students differently than the middle level. And so we wanted to make sure that that was really clear, that we thought, like, let's call them 1 and 2 as opposed to A and B, so that we can differentiate, because it is different than what's happening at the middle level. And so our students in cohort 1 will be divided by, it'll be by alpha. And so we are in the process right now of really meticulously going through every single class to make sure that this is going to work out in terms of numbers. And cohort 1 will attend school in person on Mondays and Thursdays. Cohort 2, which will be the second half of the alpha, and I don't know the exact split yet, again, because we're working on numbers. We want to make sure that it's as evenly split as we possibly can. They will attend on Tuesdays and Fridays in person. And then on Wednesdays, everybody will attend comprehensive distance learning. So they will be remote learning, all students on Wednesdays. And the reason behind that was really to acknowledge the fact that we have our students in the cloud campus, and we wanted to provide an opportunity for all students to be in one experience at the same time. Because the rest of the time, through the rest of the week, there will be simultaneous instruction. So students will be in person, some students will be in person, and some students will be at home learning remotely, depending on what cohort it is. And so we really believe that Wednesdays was important, so that, again, there was this opportunity for all students to engage in learning in the same way. We also really believe the work that our teachers have been doing in the collaborative time has been very important for us to be able to continue to move forward with instruction. And so that time on Wednesdays is something that we are very dedicated to maintaining as we move into quarter 4. Next slide, please, Christy. So as I said, students will be divided into 2 cohorts, day 1 and day 2. They'll be divided by alpha, and they'll attend classes every single day, and there will be synchronous instruction every single day for all students, whether you're in person or you're learning from home. And so teachers will instruct students simultaneously, and we are in the process of working with several districts around the state, around the country, that have engaged in this simultaneous instruction, so that we can help prepare teachers as best as possible for this new type of learning and new type of instruction. And there's a lot of really great professional development that is out there, and we, like I said, are working to make sure that our technology is up to par and able to provide the best learning opportunities for all of our students, again, whether they're in person or at home. And the reason that we made this choice was really about something we've talked about here and talked about kind of publicly a lot, is that the quarter system is a shorter amount of time than what we are used to, what we are accustomed to in the trimester system. And then when we were looking at other types of models that maybe were an asynchronous day or just a different rotation, we were really concerned about the less instructional time. And so that was the reason that we made this choice of moving towards the simultaneous instruction, to ensure that our students had as much instructional time as possible. You also, I didn't point this out on the schedule, but we did extend our class periods from 45 minutes to 60 minutes for fourth quarter, again, just to increase instruction, especially with the transitions and them being in person. We wanted to make sure that we capitalize on that time as much as possible. And in terms of the scheduled difference, we took away office hours. So our teachers right now are doing office hours that are drop-in time for students to access help. And we just have taken that away as a specific part of the schedule, but have maintained a time on either side of the day for students to access their teachers if they need help outside of class. Next slide, please. In terms of our transition, again, this was something that there were several models out there and several conversations around what was going to be the best thing for us to do in order to maintain as much instructional time in third quarter. So what we're doing currently in order for us to prepare to start for fourth quarter. And where we landed is a kind of this modified final schedule, if you will. And so the week of April 12th through the 16th is how we are going to transition our staff and prepare for return to in-person learning. And what that looks like is on Monday, the 12th, we will have a regular comprehensive distance learning day. So everything will be just as it is right now. And then April 13th through the 16th, we will have one class per day that will be considered a final for that particular class. And that will look different in every class period. This isn't saying that there's going to be a final exam in every class. That's varied for teachers all along. And so it will just be a time on those 4 days. And right now we're leaning towards just them all being at 9 a.m. We're just finalizing that with our staff to make sure that that makes sense for everybody. And so from 9 to 10 on Tuesday will be period 1. From 9 to 10 on Wednesday will be period 2, etc. And also on those days will be orientation for each of our grade levels. And so that will be run by administrators and classified staff. Our teaching staff will be busy preparing classrooms and going through professional development, but we will offer orientation, and we're working in conjunction with our student leadership group to plan some really exciting activities. We're planning to have school pictures take place. So really just like an orientation, just like we would start as a school year, is what we're planning for that week of April 13th through the 16th. And then you'll see below just the opening week schedule. So we are maintaining that Monday, the 19th of April is our grading day for quarter 3. So there'll be no school for students on that day. And then because it's a 4-day week, we will not have a CDL day like we will in the consecutive weeks. We'll just do cohort 1 in person, cohort 2 in person, etc. through the remainder of that first week of our return to instruction. Next slide, please. In terms of communication, we, like Ms. Funderheide mentioned, are trying to steal as much greatness from our elementary colleagues who are already open and have students in the building. And one of the pieces of feedback that we received was that families expressed concern about needing to see the FAQ and all of the information about the model and then immediately make a decision with a survey. And so we intentionally sent out an FAQ with information about the model for the high school level last week. We sent it out on March 5th. With the intention and understanding that we would give everybody a week or so to review that information, to reach out to us and ask questions. And we've spent a lot of time answering questions for families and so that we can send the survey out at the end of this week. And we will have it open for a week and ask families to make a decision about which instructional model they would like to use or engage in for the remainder of the school year. And so we'll send that out this coming Friday, ask for people to respond before next Friday so that we can get cohort assignments and student orientation plans out to everyone in the community and to our families by the week of April 4th. Next slide, please. That's all. That's not mine. That's Mr. Bennett's. Sorry about that. So that's where we're at right now, is we are really in this great place. A couple of pieces I didn't put on the slides, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of is that we have engaged in conversation more about our graduation ceremony and our senior activities. And so there is information coming through about that. And that is something that is still on the plates that we are really working towards coming up with the best possible plan, and including also for our seniors having these experiences. So I talked briefly about that last time, of having our seniors come in for some additional, just some special things that are just for seniors. And so those are still happening, and we are moving closer and closer to bringing those to fruition.
Questions? I've got a couple of questions. Can you talk more about what the doing both in person and online will actually look like in the classroom?
So there's a variety of things that we've been exploring around that. The first way that we have seen it happening in other schools is as simulcast. And so similar to what is happening right now in this board meeting, it would be a classroom. So there'll be some people in person, and a teacher maybe is instructing from the in-person and is presenting on the screen and is doing comprehensive distance learning with students, both on their computers in the classroom and at home. Another thing that we have seen that I think more of our teachers are leaning towards is this idea of a different structure of the class period. So maybe for the first 10 minutes, you are with the students who are in person only. And then after the first 10 minutes of maybe question and answer, then everyone logs into Zoom, or the students that are at home log into Zoom, and you spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes doing some direct instruction. And then the students that are online are working with students who are online, and the students in the classroom are working on a group activity in the classroom. And so, as I said, we're still learning a lot about this, but there are a lot of models out there for us to kind of borrow their greatness and learn from. But it really is about understanding that it isn't going to be exactly the same for both groups of students. While the actual instruction is taking place, but there will be interaction with the teacher every day. And we will we will see. We will see how it's going to go.
Thank you. Second question was, you talked about the first week being a 4-day week. Presumably there are other 4-day weeks coming. Will 4-day weeks will then always look that kind of whether it's a Monday or a Friday, that's the day off, that it'll be
Yes.
2 and 2?
Yes.
Yep.
And so our plan is to publish a calendar for the entire quarter, because off the top of my head right now, I can think of Memorial Day week. That will be a 4-day week. And so we'll make sure that everybody knows that going into the quarter, these will be the weeks that will be the anomaly weeks.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
So
Yeah,
I wasn't sure what divided by alpha means and how the cohorts are different from the middle school. Can you explain more with that,
Yes.
please?
So divided by alpha, meaning that cohort 1 will probably be the first half of the alphabet. So if your last name is A through K, let's say, I'm not positive about that, so don't quote me, but let's say A through K would be cohort 1, and then last names L through Z would be cohort 2. And at the middle level, I believe, and Ms. Funderhard can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it wasn't straight alpha split. There was more about the team that the students were on and that's how they were separated.
That's correct.
Ainsley.
Yeah, so I have a few questions. So I understand about the trying to get everyone to experience the same stuff online and in person, but I don't quite understand why we aren't taking full advantage of the weeks that we have and taking Wednesdays off. You put the survey out to see if they wanted to be in person or online, and they made their decision. So I just want clarification on why the people who want to be in person, with all respect, I do not mean to be rude right now, but I just think that the people who wanted to be in school should be in school for as long as they can, instead of taking a day off in the middle of the week.
Thanks for the question, Ainsley. The real rationale behind taking the comprehensive distance learning day in the middle of the week really falls with this idea that we simply don't have the staffing to have teachers directly and only teaching classes to students who are online. And so we have to make sure that all students have the same access to the same level of course, regardless of whether they're in person or not. And so that's why we're choosing to make sure that all students have the same access and same opportunity to education, whether they're in person or whether they choose to stay at home.
But if you're having the other 4 days of the week, what's different about the Wednesday with the staffing? Because I know at the middle school, it's every other day that people go. So would we not be able to follow that same pattern with our staff?
Let me see if I can explain it better. One difference between us and the middle school is that they will have their students who are in the cloud campus will only be with other students who are in the cloud campus. And we are anticipating, and I don't know if this is correct, but we are anticipating that the instruction is going to be challenging at different points in time for all students to access the same level of interaction with the teacher. And so we believe that having a day in a week where all students are interacting with the teacher at the same level is important.
I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Jessica.
And just to be super clear, the high school have not yet received the survey. That's coming this Friday, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what lunch will look like?
Yes, I can. So we will have 2 lunches every day. And so this is just simple math. So 800 students in the building would be half of our students in cohort 1, half of them at lunch, 400. And the idea right now is that we will have an open campus for our 11th and 12th graders. And so we anticipate additional students going off campus for lunch. And so then once all of that takes place, our cafeteria new commons area is set up to hold just under 400 students. And so we have tables that will be marked and assigned, and students will be asked to scan in to say I'm sitting at table 12 so that we can contact trace everyone who's at table 12, spread out 6 feet, all of those things in terms of wearing masks. We also are purchasing tables and space for outdoor eating. So we will encourage students to eat outdoors as much as possible, and then have significant supervision around asking and making sure that students put their masks back on as soon as they're done eating, all of those sorts of things.
Mike?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't completely understand the difference between cloud and hybrid at the high school level. For example, if there's like a social studies elective, that certain number of students take, and there's some cloud and hybrid students that want to take that, are they in the same class, or is the teacher teaching that class twice? Once for only cloud and once for only hybrid?
They're in the same class. And that was one of another big difference at the high school level, that we made the choice very early on to maintain our offerings, our course offerings. And so
Yeah.
a student in the cloud campus isn't really any different than a student whose cohort is at home on that particular day. And so that was a choice that we made in order to allow for students to be able to have access to all of the courses that we offer in our course catalog.
Thank you. Yes, that makes sense. It just wasn't clear to me.
That's okay.
Other questions? All right, I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to talk about action items.
Wherever did you get that idea? Thank you, Ms. Barron. Thank you, Director Allen. So these are the actions that we will bring to the board in the regular session, in the regular session tonight. Opening the middle school for in-person instruction on April 5th, opening the high school on April 20th, and then a whole host of associated calendar changes, which are listed in the summary page. And many of those changes are listed on the calendar, which Mr. Emmert will present in the action item section of the regular board meeting as well.
Any questions about that? Jessica?
I know that technically instruction begins on those dates. I think as we communicate to the community and really have people thinking about when do I need to make sure that my family and my student are home and we're not trying to do Zoom school from the beach or from anywhere else, it may be useful to talk about the dates that our students are starting orientation in district, because that is, at least for high school students, it's like at least a week before that. And that's a significant moment for them to be able to enter the school and be part of that. And I really think signaling to families that what we're talking about is in-person instruction, really return to in-person school beginning on the 13th of April for high schoolers, and before that for middle school, because I do think that is that's an important, relevant date.
Thank you. That's good thinking. And we'll make sure that parents know not only, the dates that orientation starts, but the dates in which specific grade levels have orientation and cohorts, so they can plan just not only for the big picture, but for their individual family, so they can make sure that they're where they need to be when they need to be there.
Other questions?
Thank you for that.
Anything else for our work session? All right, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the work session, and we'll reconvene at 7 for our regular board meeting.